We are a go. Good evening, everyone, both online and in person here. We thank you for coming and participating in this wonderful, beautiful service today at 5 o'clock at the Cosmic Center of Spiritual Light. So we welcome you, and it's a beautiful topic tonight, and it's going to be going into the many different traditions from around the world, from ancient times as well as today, as why do we celebrate Christmas time? And it's not just one particular religion. Christ's birth was placed here at this most beautiful, opportune day, but it came from many different religions and many different times. So everyone, regardless of your religion, regardless of your proclivities on what you believe, whether you're an atheist or not, whether you believe in God and Jesus, whether you're Hindu, it doesn't matter. At this point in time, at the beautiful solstice time, we can celebrate Christmas time all together and celebrate with love and joy the new coming light. And so Christ's birth signifies the incoming light. And you'll see that even in the Greeks and the Roman times, they put their god Mithra exactly at December 25th. So there's many different traditions from around the world that all coalesce and come together that we can celebrate this beautiful 12 days of Christmas. And I'm going to be going into that. But we have a request from people because I have a beautiful harp here that's keyed in the frequency of 432. 432 is a mathematical frequency that is based on renewal and a regenerative. And this is the most appropriate time to be playing 432, but it is healing to the body and the mind. And Pythagoras used this frequency when he played his own harps. And literally every single day in his mystery school, he would play medicinal music on the harp for the body, soul, and mind. So may you take this beautiful music, feel it, may it rejuvenate the very cells of your body, your spirit, and your soul. So I'm going to play that for you for just a few minutes before we go into tonight's lecture. Thank you for participating and being with us tonight. And I'd like to open up with a beautiful prayer on this beautiful Christmas tide, the Yuletide, the 12 days of Christmas, during this most beautiful, auspicious time. So let us go ahead and just take a moment. Center yourself, take a beautiful inhaling breath in, feeling God's presence within you. And this is a prayer for paradise on earth for the GEOHOL Fellowship. Great God of light, we behold your plan unfolding, whereby all spiritual clouds are dispelled, impurity and error cleansed from the realms of spirit and matter. The age of light and joy is being born through your infinite compassion. Misguided forces waken unto truth, and negative practices cease, while forces of light, unhindered, restore the plan to peace. All of nature receives your loving influence and finds its rightful place. Peaceful clouds move across brilliant skies, and the fragrance of countless flowers floats upon the air. Abundant harvests glorify the earth, every corner filled with happy voices. Boundaries between countries vanish, and ancient conflicts disappear as if dreams. All people are united, encircled by your light, and guided by your wisdom. Through service to humanity, all are blessed with health, peace, and prosperity. Great God of light, strengthen us with courage and wisdom to follow your will and realize paradise on earth. And we say, Amen, 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 and Amen. So on this beautiful day, I'd like to go into a little bit of the many different traditions from around the world. Why do we celebrate and have these beautiful rituals, whether it be holly or mistletoe, whether we have silver and gold and Santa Claus, which came from Sinterklaas from the Netherlands, and go back in time as to why we hold this time in December sacred. And that way we can embrace all religions, just as Jesus was very inclusive and included all people to come unto him. And he was absolutely a beautiful beacon, light unto the world. But can we not incorporate and embrace all the many different individuals, all their beliefs at this time, and everyone can find something beautiful to celebrate. And this is during the 12 days, the Yuletide, and this is beautifully situated. So let me go into just a little bit of the many splendid traditions. Christmas. This beloved winter holiday, in actuality, is a very beautiful holiday that was a melding of Jesus's nativity celebration with pre-existing midwinter pagan festivals by the Christian Church. Beautiful traditions of both religions are overlaid or superimposed, one on top of the other. So let us now take a look at what these special traditions are, what they believe, what their belief structure was, what they mean, and how they've been integrated to form the holiday that we know and love today. Yule is an indigenous midwinter festival celebrated by the Germanic peoples. It is the modern English representation of the Old English words Yule or Yule indicating the 12-day festival of Yule, or later to be known as Christmastide. To many, hearing the words Yuletide season means one thing, Christmas time. But as with all things, there is more to the story. Why do we hold it then? Why is it now? And it is because of the winter solstice, which we just now had, a beautiful time. Of all the times, this December 21st was the solstice, and that's when the conjunction was between Saturn and Jupiter that literally showed just like, and they called it the Star of Bethlehem, and I hope that many of you were able to see that. If you didn't, I have some pictures, and you can see on December 21st, that is the solstice day. It is the shortest day of the year, and I'll get into that because there's two solstices and there's two equinoxes. And so you have the longest day of the year and the shortest day of the year, and the two equinoxes on either side that are equidistant. So those are the 4 times that the pagans held holy, and ancient sites from around the world still hold that holy, and they erected all of these ancient sites that literally will show those times when the light comes in. They held this day of all days holy, the 2 solstices and the 2 equinoxes. So December 21st is the solstice. It's the shortest day of the year that we now have started. That is the shortest. Every day after that, it gets longer. The light comes, it becomes more. Do you see? And of all the solstices, this is the first time since 1620 that it was a special solstice because of Jupiter and Saturn on their orbits came right in one on top of the other and shone together like the Star of Bethlehem. And they do believe that that might have happened on Jesus' birth of all the times. So that's a celestial event. So what we're trying to tell you is that the ancients held this day holy because it's a celestial event. You place Jesus' birth, you place Mithra's birth, the Roman god. You see that? You actually have Thor. You have all these beautiful traditions coming and placing the birth right here at the solstice because you have the end. This is the shortened day. This is the shortest day, the longest day of nighttime. Do you see? Every day after that is going to get longer with more light. So the light comes, it returns again. So that's why they're holding this solstice day and they revere it so highly. So you'll have the longest day of the year is June 21st. That's the maximum light of the sun, right? The shortest day is December 21st, what we just had. The 2 equinoxes, when the day and the night are equal, are going to be March 20th, around that time, and September 22nd, you see? So you have the spring equinox and the fall equinox, and that's when both day and night are equidistant. So that's what you want to understand. So this is why this day, the solstice day, is considered holy. It's a celestial event that happens in the heavens that is bringing light back onto earth again for the planting, for the light returning. And that's why you would place all the gods, the avatars, the birth at that point in time as a remembrance of that. Many cultures celebrate Yuletide, Yule, as one of the low points of the wheel of life, because it's the shortest day without much sun, right? Without much light. And at that point, there is something to celebrate. As with the low point comes the celebration of life and rebirth at the end. For when one thing's diminish, then it increases, do you see, from every point after that. Doesn't this cosmological event tie in beautifully to the birth of Jesus the Christ? We celebrate his birth and life and rebirth that he gives humanity, with him becoming the Savior for mankind. So can you see how that's kind of just laid right in there beautifully? And the Christians did something wonderful. They incorporated the existing traditions of all the religions in the countries that they inhabited, and they brought them together. Do you see that? So everyone had that same time of celebration in December. Yule has been interpreted and celebrated by different cultures in their own unique ways. These religions are often referred to as pagan. The Romans, for instance, celebrated Saturnalia, a feast for the god Saturn, who is the god of agriculture and harvest, Jubilina, a feast for the children, and the birth of Mithra, one of Rome's most sacred days. Coincidentally, Saturnalia is celebrated for a week from December 17th to the 23rd, and the birth of Mithra, that's the Roman god, right? His birth was December 25th. Doesn't that sound familiar? This is pre-Christian, way before the event of Christ. Do you see that? Isn't it beautiful how that correlates? The Norse also celebrated Yule, which started on December 21st, exactly during the winter solstice, all the way through January. In fact, the Norse's Yule celebration is what is known all over Europe, with the early European pagans celebrating solstice with the New Grange tomb, the Stonehenge. There's many sacred sites around the world that celebrate that one moment in time with the solstices, you see. The Scandinavians knew that the sun's return from winter signaled new planting and harvesting and celebration of plenty. Think of the cornucopia. Do you see that? The horn of plenty. That's where that comes from. The feasting, the horn of plenty. Do you see that's how that's pagan, that's Norse, and it comes in with this? The celebration of plenty rather than lean. The light returns to earth again. This meaning can be overlaid with and can be symbolic of Jesus's birth, granting us and paving the way back to paradise, land of plenty also. Can you see how that interlates and interlaces together? Yule is a 12-day holiday, which starts December 21st and ends 12 days later on Yule night. This 12-day Yule celebration is the source of the beloved idea of the 12 days of Christmas. And now you know when we sing the song, the 12 days of Christmas, where that comes from. We celebrate Christmas on December 25th, the Christ child's birth. It is very interesting to know that Rome's god, Mithra, was also born on December 25th. December 25th, and you're going to find this really interesting, may have been selected as Christ's birth due to the proximity to the winter solstice, because of its theological significance. After the solstice, the days begin to lengthen with more sunlight, which Christians see as representing the light of Christ entering the world. This mirrors the celebration of the Nativity of St. John the Baptist on June 24th, near the summer solstice. John said of Jesus, "He must increase and I must decrease." And you can think of it as celestial heavens, you see, with the light coming and the light going. The earliest source stating December 25th as the date of the birth of Jesus is likely by Hypothalamus of Rome, who wrote very early in the 3rd century this. His idea was based on the assumption that the conception of Jesus's birth, his conception took place on the spring equinox. Remember, that was like March 25th. So then he places and adds 9 months to that, which then correlates with December 25th. I thought that can you see how they came up with that? His conception is on March 25th, right? And then 9 months later, December 25th, which also correlates with the solstice. So you can see how these solstices are absolutely connected to Christ. The 25th of March would also roughly be the date of his crucifixion, which ancient Christians would have seen as confirming the date of his birth on December 25th. Since this, and back then, there was a notion that the great prophets were conceived into the afterlife, died, and then were conceived into the afterlife on the same day they were conceived into the world. Isn't that interesting? So when you were conceived, if you were a great prophet, would then be the date that you died and went back to heaven. That's the point, do you see, of incoming and outgoing. So now let's kind of get into at least some of the beautiful things and the traditions that we have today. The pagans would have believed, let's think of evergreens, right? We all have the trees, we have the evergreens, we have holly, all of us. Evergreens, why do we have an evergreen? Why isn't it not another tree, right? Evergreens were cut and brought indoors to symbolize life, rebirth, and renewal. They were thought to have power over death because their green never faded, and they were used to defeat or hold back death. I thought that was interesting, to hold back death and destruction because of their strength and tenacity. They also believed that they encouraged the return of the sun. Can you see that celestial event coming in? They want the return of the light. So let's talk about the Yule tree. We have the tree, the evergreen, meaning renewal, right? It never fades, renewal. Now, why the tree? What's the Yule tree? This is pagan. The Yule tree was also another important symbol in pagan tradition. Originally, it represented the tree of life or the world tree among early pagans. In ancient times, it was decorated with gifts people wanted to receive from the gods. Now think of that, isn't that beautiful? You would have a tree, an evergreen tree that lives, it doesn't die, and that you're putting little gifts as a hopeful. This is the gift I would like to receive from the gods. And so you would put a little, gift on there saying, please, dear God, this is what I wish to receive. Isn't that kind of interesting? It was adorned with natural ornaments such as pine cones, berries, and other fruit, as well as symbols sacred to the gods and goddesses. So they have both gods and goddesses during this time, you see. In some holiday traditions, garlands of popcorn and berries were strung around the tree so that visiting birds could feed off the tree as well. Now you can see where the whole tradition of the popcorn, you see the cranberries, so now you can start to see how these beautiful traditions are mixed together and appreciate all of them. So now let's talk about the meaning of the Christmas tree. From where did this also come from? Because there's other meanings and they have different legends. So the best I can do is give you the legends and where they sourced from. And then we can also decide what we want to pick and choose and what we want to have meaning for us today. Among the many accounts claiming to explain the origin of the Christmas tree, the three most popular are from Germany, making it the likeliest place of origin. The stories span from the 8th to the 16th century. All three are rooted in historical fact and may even be connected to one another. So you have three different stories they're all kind of, there's a genesis there in Germany, do you see? And so we have to kind of siphon through which one might have been the originating one since we're going so far back in time. The first story is about Saint Boniface, whose birth name was Winifred. And in the 8th century, he was a missionary to some of the remotest tribes of Germany. He is probably best known for what is called the felling of Thor's oak. You're going to find this is really interesting, guys. It is said that upon entering a town in northern Hesse, he learned there that the people worshiped the god Thor. They believed that Thor resided in a great oak tree among them. So Boniface, St. Boniface, was determined that if he wanted to earn the audience with these German people, that he would have to control and confront Thor. So he announced before the people that he was going to cut down that oak tree who had Thor inside of him, and he openly challenged Thor to strike him down. Miraculously, as Boniface began to chop the oak, a mighty wind blew and hurled the tree to the ground. Tradition holds that a fir tree was growing in the roots of the oak, and Boniface claimed the tree is a symbol of Christ. Needless to say, the people readily accepted St. Boniface's message, and the tree would serve as a reminder of the mighty God who was humbly born into the world as a man on Christmas Day. So that's, you know, he strikes down the oak tree that Thor resides, right? And inside of it is this fir tree. So you can see where that genesis started happening. That's renewal, the birth of that, the felling of something old, the rebirth of a new religion, Christianity. So another possible source for the origin of the Christmas tree comes from the medieval religious plays in Germany. Among the most popular of these plays was the Paradise play. It stated and started with the creation of man, acted out the first sin in the play, and showed Adam and Eve being expelled from paradise, the Garden of Eden. This play closed with the promise of a coming Savior, which made the play a particular favorite during the Christmas season. In the play, the Garden of Eden was most often represented by a fir tree, hung with apples and surrounded by candles. See the apple is Eve with the apple. Do you see that? So you can start to see there's plays in the medieval times, and this is all during the Christmas, the solstice. You see this, and the legends start to creep up with this. At one point, religious plays were suppressed in Germany, and the popular symbol of the Paradise play made its way into the homes of Christians. By the 15th century, Christians started to decorate their trees not only with apples, the symbol of sin and the need for a savior, but with small white wafers, the symbol of Christ's body, the Savior. These wafers were later replaced by little pieces of pastry cut in the shape of stars, angels, and bells. Now you can see the little sugar cookies. That's the genesis of where that came from. And then now you know when you partake, oh, that's like the wafer. That's the Eucharist wafer. That's Christ's body. That's where that's coming from. So the connection between the Garden of Eden, paradise, and Christmas is profound. The first sin in the Garden of Eden was eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and wanting to be like God. How did God address this sin? God became a man that we might be saved. And trees play a significant role in the entirety of the Christian story. For the temptation that brought sin into the world hung on a tree, the forbidden fruit. And the act that resulted in salvation from sin, Christ on the cross. Christ hung on a tree. Furthermore, once sin entered the world in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve and all mankind were no longer permitted to eat of the tree of life. However, in eternity, Christ's work on the cross will give us the right to eat of the tree of life once again. Revelations 2:7. Reflections for Christmas. Adam and Eve ate of the tree of knowledge, hoping to become like God. And God, with absolute love for us, sent us Jesus, the Christ. God taking human form like man to redeem and save us. We celebrate this wondrous birth of Jesus, God, man combined, at this most auspicious time of the world and of the year. So you have a celestial event, and this is truly what we're celebrating, is God's return like the light to earth to save mankind. Now the third, or this other tradition for where the Christmas tree came from is this. A third tradition about the origin of the Christmas tree attributes it to Martin Luther, the leader of the Reformation. Some say that on Christmas Eve, Luther was walking through the woods near his home. He was struck by the beauty of how the snow shimmered in the moonlight on the branches of the tree. In an effort to recreate the magnificent sight for his family, he cut down the tree, placed it in his home, and decorated it with candles. Though there may be disagreement on where the tradition of the Christmas tree first started, the case is certainly strong for both a German and a Christian origin. As might be expected, the popular carol, O Christmas Tree, or in the German, O Tannenbaum, also has its beginning in Germany. So that just lends credence to that stemmed and came from, or was sourced out of Germany. Now, I wanted to just touch base to describe this to you also about Santa Claus, because you can see how all these traditions are coming together, and there's great beauty in each one, but we need to know what we're doing and where it came from. So in the Netherlands, there really was a Sinterklaas, and that's how they say it, Sinterklaas, or in English, Saint Nick, you see? And so the whole legend of Santa Claus is based on Saint Nicholas. Out of the Netherlands, he was the patron saint of children, and he exists, he lived. They still celebrate this. December 5th is Saint Nicholas Eve. How similar, Christmas Eve, right? December 6th is the feast day. So let me tell you, this whole legend in Holland actually is where the legend came from for Saint Nicholas that we put in at the solstice. Now, can you see what happens? So this is still being celebrated today in Holland, in the Netherlands. So Sinterklaas, they actually have a parade on December 6th. That's the feast day. And Santa, or Sinterklaas, arrives, right, with a white horse, and his little helper is Wat Piet, he's from Turkey, but they actually arrive in a boat on the parade. Their tradition dates back, and think about this beautiful tradition in Holland, that on that eve, on your feast day, that you will actually have chocolate letters that are used to decorate each place setting with your first initial, but also gingerbread. You see that? They have this gingerbread men and women with your little letter. So that's what they're doing. So on St. Nicholas's Eve, right? This is their legend, and this is what happens, and they're celebrating it, that St. Nicholas will ride across the rooftops of Holland looking for and rewarding good children with small gifts and candies. Children place carrots and oats for Sinterklaas for his horse, his white horse, in their wooden shoes, and they can place it by the door or by the chimney. How very like what we're doing, right? And awaiting for the next morning the gifts that they will receive from Sinterklaas. And then the feast begins on that day. So St. Nicholas actually lived from 270 to 343 AD. He was a real person. He was a Greek bishop of Myra in Turkey. They describe him how like Santa Claus, old, white hair, long white beard, wears a red cape over his white bishop's outfit. He actually has a red hat, you know, the bishop's hat, right? He has a red ruby ring, and he actually holds a long shepherd's staff. And he will have that headdress of the bishops. Very similar to Santa Claus, right? And he's riding, Santa Claus rides over the rooftops. He just has reindeers versus a white horse, right? And Sinterklaas out of the Netherlands, he carries a red book and records whether the children have been good or naughty. And then his little buddy, Swat Piet, right, actually has a little broom that he might spank the naughty boys and girls with. So I thought that. So here, and he was dressed in Moorish attire. So you also have this beautiful legend, which we cannot substantiate, but that's down to the years. They have said how it originated was Sinterklaas, Saint Nicholas here, who is a bishop. Back then, you can think 270 to 343 AD was really important for women to have dowries so that they would have a good match, right? And so the legend has it that there were 3 sisters that was from a poor family, and they had no dowry. And then they were going to be destitute and just had a horrible life in front of them. And he was able to, at night, throw in 3 gold coins to them so that they would have a dowry, be able to be married and have a life that would be worthwhile. And that's where that legend is. And he started putting and giving the candies and the little gifts either down the chimney or through the doorway. So I thought that was just beautiful. And then they're saying Swat Piet, that his face is black because he's climbing down the chimney with all the soot. So I thought that was cute. So let's go back here. We've talked about the tree, and I want to talk to you about the Yule log now. Again, this is pagan. Where does this come from? This predates Christianity, right? During the 12 days of Christmas. The custom of burning the Yule log began with the ancient Scandinavians, who burned a huge log felled from an ash tree to honor their god Thor. You hear this Thor business again, right? In the Celtic tradition, a continual hearth fire was kept to prevent spirits from entering the home. In order for the fire to keep burning, a large oak tree was felled and brought into the home, where the tree was placed trunk first into the hearth, with the last remnant set aside to burn with next year's fire. It was also believed that the longer the Yule log burned, the faster the sun would come down to warm the earth. So it's like a beckoning. Do you see this? Bringing the light back in, bringing the warmth back in, because then you can have the harvest and you can plant, then you can have the feasts. Do you see? So it's a harvesting, but you need the sunlight to come back in. So regardless of its original origin, for the Christian feast of Christmas, the Yule log came to symbolize the battle between good and evil. As the fire grew brighter and burned hotter, and as the log turned into ashes, it symbolized Christ's final and ultimate triumph over sin. So you can see you already had this pagan tradition, and they overlaid the Christianity's meaning on top of it. And that's where you get a blending of both. Christmas for Christians then represents the greatest gift that God could grant us, the birth of Jesus, that gives us hope and a way back to him. The birth of Jesus represents God's unconditional love for humanity and Jesus' pure and humble gift to all humanity. Christmas then is really about totally pure, unconditional, irrepressible, inconceivably self-denying true love in every sense of the word for all humanity and all creatures. Giving to others as the Christ child gave to humanity then can be this beautiful gift during, of course, the 12 days of Christmas, but throughout 365 days of Christmas. As we can emulate Christ's giving, as we can emulate all the beautiful, pure, unconditional love that can emanate peace from around the world, especially at this time. I think we're really called to utilize this beautiful, inclusive way to incorporate all peoples, all walks of life, and to grant peace. I mean, that is the message for Christmas. And so what I wanted to also do is talk a little bit about some holly and some mistletoe and the bells and wreaths and candles. And then I can close up and we'll have a beautiful prayer at the end. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of tidbits because you say, we have bells, we have mistletoe, what's all that coming from, right? So let's talk a little bit. So let's talk about candles, because everyone has the candles, and you see people who put the candles in the window, right? From the pagan era, candles were another way to have an internal flame within the home. They symbolized the light and warmth of the sun and were used to chase away the evils and lure, do you see this? Lure back the returning sun. In Christianity, sun, Jesus. Do you see this? That's that eternal light. And Jesus was the light. So can you see how you can have the pagan and the Christianity overlaid one on top of the other? And they can both symbolize almost the same type of calling back and a remembrance of. Now we also have wreaths. Where does the wreaths come into play, right? Wreaths were also traditional in ancient times, for they symbolized the wheel of the year and completion of another cycle. They were made of evergreens and adorned with cones and berries and hung as a decoration throughout the home. They were also given as gifts to symbolize the infinity of goodwill, friendship, and joyfulness. That's from ancient of times. Okay, so can you see how now that we have brought that in and we still utilize that today on the doorways? They still have the pine cones and berries, right? And that's what that is. So it's that wheel, completion, you see in the circle, and it's also friendship, may it continue. Now, why do we go into churches and you always have the bells, right? And they play, even at Christmas time, all the bells and the songs. Bells were often rung during the winter solstice to drive away the evil spirits that surface during the dark time of the year. Now, so can you see where that came in from the pagan times? They were rung in the morning as everyone began to wake to chase away the dark days and herald in the warmer, brighter days following the solstice. So if the solstice falls at the 21st, every single day then it's more light. Do you see that? So it's heralding in, bringing in more light, brighter days. Do you see? And chasing away the dark days. We also have elves. I've explained Santa Claus, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
So now, and we've even got the chimney sweep with the soot, right? Where did the elves come in? It's pagan. Elves first became associated with the Yule or Yuletide because the ancients knew that the spirits that created the sun inhabited the land of elves. By including elves in the Yule or Yuletide celebrations, the ancients believed that they were assuring the elves' assistance in the coercion of the sun to earth. So now can you see, they already had Sinterklaas, but they had Piat over there. He was a helper, right? And he had the little bag with the gifts. You then add the pagan on top of that with the elves, with the assistants. What are the elves now doing? Instead of assisting the sun's return, they're assisting Santa Claus with the gifts. And you're bringing in, the nature, the land of the elves for help to now just assist Santa Claus instead of the return of the sun. Does that kind of make sense now? Now, gingerbread, because we've seen a couple of times where the gingerbread is coming up, right? Gingerbread was considered to be a specialty bread during this time, since ginger had not been available until the Crusaders brought it back in the 11th century. There were strict laws regarding specialty breads in that time, so gingerbread was only allowed to be produced during the holidays, and thus it became associated with winter and Yule. And then you also have during that time that they're drinking, in their singing, during that time they're also drinking a special mead with honey and spices with mulled apple cider. So that's where we get that hot apple cider today, and in the singing, you see? And so that's where that came from back then. And now let's talk about the caroling. Caroling was also a popular Yule tradition when young children honored the winter solstice with song. So before Christianity, with the solstice, the children would sing, you see, to honor the winter solstice. So the little children singing, they would go through the villages singing door to door. The villagers in return would reward them with tokens and sweets and small gifts, which symbolized the food and the prosperity given by the mother goddess to all her earthly children. And you see, they already had those traditions. The children were already singing, but they're singing really to honor the mother goddess, all the abundance coming, you see. And then you have Christianity coming in and just incorporating that tradition. And now people will go house to house caroling, but instead of talking and singing about the abundance of the mother goddess, they're talking about Christ the Savior. But they still will use the bells, right? So can you see this? It's now you can start to see all these beautiful traditions. The nature symbols of the Yule then is holly, oak, mistletoe, ivy, evergreens, and the thistle, frankincense, pine, sage, and yellow cedar. Now what I wanted to I only have just a few more minutes. I at least wanted to give you two more things that the Druids would worship, and they would have during their time. They had again this goddess that would come, and it was during this Adines, which is the goddess, that they would, during the solstice, you see, they would celebrate her. It was again, so the Druids were doing this because she was breathing in new life into their lands and island where they were. So you have again that mother goddess representation during the solstice time, and that's from the Druids. So, and then when they would burn a log, remember the Yule log? If a pink spark flickered, it would mean that the energy would seep into the world, into the new year. And then they would also exchange gifts. That's the symbol of unity. So you can see the Druids coming in and doing the same types of things during the solstice. And so the mistletoe was so holy with the Druids, and it represented again the mother goddess, but it was also about peace, and that they would grab the mistletoe, the women would grab it and could never even touch the ground. And then if you saw the mistletoe, even if it was another enemy, you would lay your sword down and have a truce and have that peace and unity. So that's where the mistletoe comes in. Do you see this? And mistletoe represented fertility, it represented abundance, it represented all kinds of beautiful things from the mother goddess. And it was held so holy that that's where, when it was hung from anywhere, it was sacred, it could never touch the ground because it had energy in it, that the Druids or anyone, even during the Crusade times, if you saw the mistletoe, that was where you would lay your arms down. And that's the peace. So you can see now where the mistletoe even comes in. We went through the trees, even the candies, the apples, right? So we have during that time in the 12 days. So hopefully I've been able to bring to you samples of many of the beautiful traditions as to how and why we celebrate them today and how they've come together into this beautiful holiday that we now celebrate, which you'll see where it came from, and maybe it will hold some special significance for you, and see the unity that we can all approach with acceptance, with love, with light and peace. And so I would like to go ahead and close with a prayer, and then I'm watching my time to make sure I'm here. And close with peace in our hearts. And if I can find it, it is, because we're talking about all the religions, I'd like to close with an Indian prayer. We've spoke about the mother goddess, we spoke about Christ, we have spoke about the pagans and the Druids, and now let's also incorporate the American Indians. So let us close with that. Ahu Tuka Asun. All my relations, I honor you in this circle of life with me today. I am grateful for this opportunity to acknowledge you in this prayer. To the Creator, for the ultimate gift of life, I thank you. To the mineral nation that has built and maintained my bones and all foundations of life experience, I thank you. To the plant nation that sustains my organs and body and gives me healing herbs for sickness, I thank you. To the animal nation that feeds me from your own flesh and offers your loyal companionship in this walk of life, I thank you. To the human nation that shares my path as a soul upon the sacred wheel of earthly life, I thank you. To the spirit nation that guides me invisibly through the ups and downs of life, and for carrying the torch of life through the ages, I thank you. To the four winds of change and growth, I thank you. You are all my relations, my relatives, without whom I would not live. We are all in the circle of life together, coexisting, codependent, co-creating our destiny. One, not more important than the other. One nation evolving from the other, and yet each dependent upon the one above and the one below. All of us a part of the great mystery. Thank you for this life. Oho, Madiwan Asam, is a simple and yet profound statement. It comes from the Lakota Nation and means all my relations. It is spoken during prayer and ceremony to invite and acknowledge all relatives to the moment. And I would say at this most beautiful, auspicious time of the year, the solstice time, the Christmastide, the Yuletide, may we open our hearts to all of our relations throughout all this world and all the countries and all the cities, throughout all the people that we know and love in this life. And let us send peace throughout the entire world. It is very much needed. And may we say this beautiful prayer that you are part of my relations. So I'm going to close the service with this harp, the crystal harp, that will be played in 432. And may it resound with the beauty of peace and renewal during these beautiful 12 days now that you understand all the rituals, the Yuletide, the Christmastide. And so may each reverberation reverberate peace into you and from you out to all your relations, which is entire world, all humanity. So I will close with this. And if you are so called, please make a donation to the Cosmic Center of Spiritual Light. They do need your assistance to keep this beautiful light transmissions and information coming forth to the world. And you can go there by ccosl.com, click the donate button. Thank you for this beautiful time that you were able to be part of. And may the reverberations of peace into you reverberate through you and out into the world. We'll close with a couple of moments so that you may hear, see, and feel the beautiful frequencies of 432. May the peace abide in you and through you, and may you show it with every word and action as you live your life. And we'll close the service for now. Thank you all for coming. And again, happy Yuletide.